There are voices that whisper in the dark corridors of your mind, and though no ear can hear them, your soul feels the chill of their presence. These are not the voices of flesh and blood, but of shadows, spirits that seek to bend your thoughts until you no longer know whether they are your own. Their great weapon is not the shout, but the subtle murmur, the suggestion, the faint echo that convinces you to believe a lie before you have even recognized its birth. And if you surrender, your mind becomes not a fortress but an open field, and every dart of despair, envy, fear, and pride may enter unchecked. The first step to silence them is to recognize their language, for they rarely come with horns or thunder. Rather, they come cloaked in the sound of your own reasoning. They say, "You are not good enough," and you mistake it for humility. They say, "Others are against you," and you mistake it for wisdom. They say, "There is no hope," and you mistake it for realism. The enemy always prefers the counterfeit coin to the outright theft, for if he can persuade you that his voice is your own, then you will never think to resist. So sharpen your discernment. Ask yourself, does this thought lead me to love or to bitterness? Does it lead me to peace or to unrest? For the fruit always reveals the root. The second step is to understand that silence is not achieved by mere willpower. You do not argue endlessly with a liar, for he will always produce another lie. Instead, you must bring into your mind a louder truth, one strong enough to drown the whispers. When fear speaks, rehearse courage. When shame hisses, rehearse forgiveness. When despair crouches at your door, rehearse hope. It is not enough to drive the darkness out. You must let in the light. A mind empty of evil is still a vacant house, and every vacant house is an invitation to intruders. But a mind filled with truth becomes a fortress where no enemy can abide. The third step is persistence, for the war of the mind is not won in a single battle. The enemy is patient, and he will test every crack in your armor. One day he will whisper of your past, another day of your future, another day of your failures, and yet another of your pride. He never grows weary, but you may. Therefore, you must decide that even when the shadows return, you will return again to the light. Each resistance strengthens your spirit, as muscles grow stronger by strain. Each silence you impose upon the enemy's voice makes room for the still, small voice of truth that steadies your heart. So when the demonic spirits come, and they will come, do not mistake them for your own thoughts, nor give them the hospitality of your mind. Fill yourself daily with truth, so that their whispers sound thin and powerless. And stand firm, for the one who does not yield will find that in the end the voices grow quieter, until they are nothing more than the faintest echo of a war already won. Recognize the counterfeit voices that disguise themselves as your own thoughts. The most dangerous trick of the enemy is not in how loudly he shouts, but in how quietly he imitates. The demonic voices that seek to control your mind seldom come with the stench of sulfur or the noise of clashing steel. They slip instead into the language of your own thoughts, disguising themselves so perfectly that you do not question their origin. You hear, "You will never be enough," and it sounds like your own conclusion. You hear, "Everyone is against you," and it sounds like your own careful analysis. You hear, "There is no hope left," and it feels like your own realism. But each of these is a counterfeit coin, pressed into your hand by a thief who hopes you will spend it as if it were real. To recognize the counterfeit, you must learn to examine the fruit of every thought. Ask yourself, does this idea lift me toward love, or does it pull me toward bitterness? Does it give me clarity, or does it leave me in confusion? Does it plant courage, or does it cultivate fear? A thought that poisons you will never come from the fountain of truth. Once you discern its character, you can see that the voice is not yours, but an intruder's. And when you know it is an intruder, you no longer have to obey. Recognition is the first defense, for once the mask is removed, the disguise loses its power. Replace every lie with a louder truth that fills your mind with light. It is not enough to recognize a lie. You must also silence it, and silence is not achieved by willpower alone. The liar will not grow weary of speaking just because you wish him to stop. He is tireless, weaving new arguments, new accusations, new whispers. If you attempt to argue endlessly with such a voice, you will find yourself entangled in webs of confusion. The only way to silence is to fill the mind with a louder truth, one so radiant that the shadows cannot remain. When fear says, "You are alone," truth replies, "I will never leave you." When shame whispers, "You are beyond forgiveness," truth proclaims, "Mercy is new every morning." When despair insists, "There is no future," truth answers, "Hope does not disappoint." In this way, the soul becomes not merely an empty battlefield, but a garden enclosed. A vacant mind is a dangerous mind, for if you sweep the house clean but leave it empty, the voices will return with greater force. But if you fill the house with light, if you decorate the rooms with courage, hope, and love, then no intruder can remain within. To silence is not simply to drive something out, but to bring something greater in. And when the greater voice speaks, the lesser is drowned out, powerless in the presence of truth. Persevere daily, for each act of resistance makes the whispers weaker. Even when you learn to recognize and replace the voices, the battle is not finished. The enemy is persistent, and he will test every weakness in the fortress of your mind. One day he will whisper of your failures, another day of your fears, and yet another of your pride. His aim is not merely to tempt you, but to weary you, so that you give up the fight and allow his whispers to take root. This is why perseverance is essential. Victory is not won in a single confrontation, but through steady resistance. Each time you reject his voice, your spirit grows stronger, much as muscles grow with every strain they endure. Every refusal to bow is a declaration that your mind is not a playground for darkness, but a dwelling place for truth. And though the enemy does not tire, you are not fighting alone. Help comes unseen, strength is renewed, and light is given afresh each morning. The secret is not perfection, but persistence. The one who falls yet rises again is still beyond the reach of despair. And the one who continues, even through the noise of 1,000 whispers, will one day hear them grow faint, until they are nothing but the echoes of a defeated foe. The shadows linger, but the dawn is stronger, and every act of perseverance brings the dawn nearer.